Does anyone remember the SpongeBob episode, The Sponge Who Can Fly, that aired on March 2003? It was dubbed the Lost Episode by its commercials based on the episode's storyline, where Patchy the Pirate uses a treasure map to find the SpongeBob episode that he lost. The night before the episode was aired, I was sick with the stomach flu. I was feeling too ill to fall asleep, and I stayed up and watched TV. Around 2:30 a.m., my stomach started to settle, so I started to plan to turn off the TV and try to get some sleep. But as I was reaching for my remote control, the opening for SpongeBob started playing. SpongeBob was my favorite show all the time, so I couldn't miss out on watching it. Although I thought it was kind of strange for they were airing SpongeBob at the middle of the night, but I didn't think much of it. When the opening played, I noticed that the contrast of the animation was slightly darker than usual, and the theme song was sounded a bit harsh and raspy. This made me a bit uncomfortable, but I also tried to brush that off. The title card read, Lost Episode, so I figured that it was a mishap and Nickelodeon was accidentally airing The Sponge Who Could Fly. When the episode started playing, it immediately looked out of the ordinary. It started off with SpongeBob sitting on his bed, slouching and looking downward with a somber look on his face. This is not like himself. SpongeBob was so optimistic on the time. Why would he be acting like this? About 10 seconds of seeing SpongeBob like this, he let out a big sigh, then looked over his bedside barrel, and the screen zoomed in on a pill bottle that was sitting beside his clock. Once the screen zoomed in, I realized it was a Prozac bottle. Then the show cut to a scene with a much brighter contrast, showing SpongeBob taking one of the pills. They're running off, smiling and laughing. The fact that SpongeBob has to take pills to be, well, himself, made me feel uneasy, especially because mental disorders and occupations was more mutual things that obviously shouldn't be in a place in any kid's cartoon. It should be noted that this was the show intended for kids. The screen then flipped to the original scene of SpongeBob looking distressed, while at the same time changing the contrast back to the darker one. The screen froze on SpongeBob for a few seconds, then flickered to a new one. The scene was showed at his desk, the same one that he used procrastination with his Prozac bottle, a piece of paper, and a pencil. In this scene, instead of playing one contrast, the color looked flashing light to dark. SpongeBob gripped the pencil in his hand, and a tear rolled down his face. The part that bothered me the most is that the tear doesn't look like the usual cartoon-style tear the characters used to make SpongeBob cry. The tear looked completely realistic, as if there were a drop of water rolling down my TV from his eyes. SpongeBob wiped his tear from his face with his sleeve and began to write on the paper, reading out loud of what he was writing. I can't take it anymore, he said as soon as he got that sentence out. A faint noise sounded playing in the background. It sounded like a child crying. The noise continued playing as SpongeBob continued writing. My life has been horrible. It hasn't got any better. My best friend Patrick is my only friend because he doesn't even know any better. My neighbor Squidward hates my guts. He will probably be happy if I wasn't around anymore. SpongeBob stopped writing and talking and began to weep loudly. The color flickered, started to get faster, and the cries in the background started to get louder. and it sounded like more children were beginning to cry. It could have been my imagination, but I remember hearing one of the children faintly yell, "He's gonna do it." The children's cry became louder, and the colors kept flickering faster and faster as SpongeBob kept writing. The only job I could get is being a damn fry cook at the Krusty Krab. My boss, Mr. Krabs, refused me to give me an actual paycheck, and the bastard basically used me to get more customers. I'm still in my 20s, and I still don't have my driver's license. Sandy is the only girl I have in my life, and even she's just a friend. She'll never have any interest or love in me. I'm pretty sure she's my only friend because she feels sorry for me. I'm sorry if I'm hurting anyone for doing this, but I can't live like this anymore. The screen froze for a few seconds, then the show continued with SpongeBob writing his final sentence. The contrast stayed dark instead of flickering light to dark. The children stopped crying as the absolute signs of the sunshine saying goodbye. The cries came back. SpongeBob quickly stood up, twisted the lid of the Prozac bottle, dipped his head back, and then dumped all the pills in the bottle into his mouth, then swallowed them whole. The screen twitched and the animation was darker, but still visible. SpongeBob clenched his stomach and vomited realistic pale orange puke. It was clear that his body was trying to cleanse himself from the overdose, but it was no use. SpongeBob collapsed on the door and lied there motionless until the screen turned static. It was it. It was order. It was over. Needless to say, I was scared out of my mind, and sleep was out of the question. Recently, I've been looking for this episode all over the internet. No, and not even one website seemed to have it. If you recognize this episode, please let me know. It would be good if I know any more about this stuff.
Goodbye.